area annually every year in India. And India is the third emitter of greenhouse gases. If you are reading newspapers, you can see that a very big event is being organized now globally to talk about green growth, low carbon growth strategies. And air pollution, if you look at World Bank sites, there are a large number of studies that deals with indoor and outdoor air pollution. And indoor air pollution, maybe India, especially North India, is it's a very serious problem. And outdoor air pollution throughout maybe all Indian cities, the problem is very severe. So on the one side, we say that we are growing, and on the other side, we have very serious problems on the environmental quality side, the human welfare side. The quality of human life is being affected. And this debate was, can we grow like this forever? This debate is not new. It was there. And I think if you are taking a course on environmental economics, you must have studied, or you must have read about these limits to growth. Where they say that there is a natural limit to growth. You cannot grow like this. You cannot continue increasing your GDP. And you must have, at least you must have heard about these concept of limits to growth and the predictions by Paul Ehrlich. But there is an opposite argument, equally strong, which says that why should you worry when the technology is there to help you? Let all the natural resources fade away. Let all the environment die. We have alternate technologies. You need not worry about natural resources or environmental quality. We have substitutes, technology substitutes to deal with the problem. And all those predictions are not going to be true. And as students of economics, you must have studied about Kuznets curve. And this is environmental Kuznets curve, which says that economic growth will eventually regress the adverse environmental impacts. This is the shape of the curve. Which means, as you grow richer, you have more concern for environmental quality, so that the demand for environmental quality will be there. So there will be some mechanism to meet this demand, and eventually that will protect the environmental quality. And this is perhaps a very strong school of thought. So this brings out a very important issue. Now, when you are rich, as I said, you go for organic produce. Now you are, I think most of the people are very much concerned about the pesticide residue in vegetables. And everybody is starting to grow the vegetables in the gardens or rooftop because of this fear of pesticide residue. So naturally, you are giving more importance to the qualitative dimensions, because in Kerala, we have two major factors. One is the growing per capita income, and the other is the higher level of education that you have. So you are giving more importance to the qualitative dimensions. You are giving more importance to the qualitative dimensions of this Adilapalli waterfall than to the possibility of generating electricity, or to the possibility of constructing a dam for irrigating the agricultural fields downstream. So you are more concerned about the services from the ecosystem, not the direct benefits that you derive. Or rather, you are looking at a forest not for the timber value. The value of the forest is not the value of the timber alone. It is something more than that. You think about all the ecosystem services from forest. That's happening. So there are two components to any ecosystem. Some benefits that you derive directly, as like the timber that you get from the forest, and some services that you enjoy indirectly, like the climate regulation, the flood regulation, the biodiversity, and all those umpteen services. So there are two parts to any environmental good, any natural resource. You have two parts. One is the direct benefit, the other one is the rather indirect, or the services that you enjoy. So nowadays, people are more concerned or looking on the service side than the direct benefits. And that is why there has been a lot of efforts to define these ecosystem services and also to value the ecosystem services. So traditionally, if you are asked to put an economic value, a price tag to say 1 hectare of forest, traditionally, we simply value the timber that is harvested from the forest or standing volume, the price of the standing volume in the forest, plus some of the non-timber forest products like the medicinal plants and like. But now, we are trying to value the indirect service benefits from forest. So for that process, there was I think that attempt was there, and there are certain tools standardized in environmental economics, and there were several efforts, and perhaps the massive global effort was in 2005, what is known as the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. And in that, they made a certain categorization of ecosystem services, like they start with provisioning services. Provisioning services basically corresponds to those direct benefits that everyone was aware of. For instance, the timber that you get from the forest, or the rice yield that you realize from a paddy field. That is the direct provisioning service. All those direct, tradable, marketed benefits produce from that ecosystem. That comes under the provisioning services. Then you talk about the regulating services, which include the air quality regulation, climate regulation, soil erosion control, water purification, pest management, pollination, natural hazard regulation, all those services that manage the atmosphere at large. That is regulating services. Then comes the cultural services. We know that, especially Indian culture, if you talk about, there is a lot of spiritual and religious values attached to many of the natural resources, especially forests and rivers and many places. We know that we attach some value, cultural value, knowledge systems, educational values, aesthetic values, recreation and ecotourism values. All those indirect benefits, you go for excursions, you go for evening trips. So all those values that you attach, that's perhaps part of your personality itself, your customs, traditions, culture, that is categorized under cultural values. So we have provisioning services, we have regulating services, we have cultural services, and we have supporting services. Supporting services, it's not easy to describe that. There is a complex interaction between these three services. And that hidden part of the service is categorized as supporting services. So now we know that how complex it is to value these services. It's very easy to value the provisioning services because you can measure the timber that is harvested. You can measure the paddy that is harvested from a paddy field. You can just multiply it with the market price or any shadow price that you have studied perhaps. But it is not easy to value the regulatory service or the cultural service. So, but there were several attempts, as I said. We know that the regulatory service is there, or the cultural service is there. And for policy making purpose, often the question is, what exactly is the economic value, total economic value of this ecosystem when compared with an alternate development program? For instance, you remember the Adirapalli case. So they compare it with, okay, you are destroying this much of forest. So what is the value of the forest that is destroyed? And they compare it with the value that is generated because of the electricity or irrigation. So if you follow the traditional method, you will be only looking at the timber value of forest. And you have very beautiful, rather inflated value for the electricity that is generated or agriculture production that is created out of irrigation. So that, in that process, the decision making is always in favor of constructions or development.